From WisPolitics in Madison, you're listening to Capital Chats.
Hello, everybody. This is Kate Morton with WisPolitics here with a Capital Chats episode brought to you by Spectrum. Today I'm here in the Madison office to share an interview with Forward Analytics Director Dale Knapp. We talked a little bit about the housing shortage in Wisconsin and how that will impact Wisconsinites in the future. But here's the interview. All right. Well, hello, Dale. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
It's great to be here today.
Awesome. Well, to get it started, we're just going to talk a little bit about the housing shortage in Wisconsin. You know, the state has some different demographic issues with the aging population, reaching retirement age, and the impact on the workforce. But how does that impact housing in Wisconsin?
Yeah, it affects it in a really unusual way. It's something that people don't think about. One of the reports we did a couple of years ago, we looked at workforce and the challenges that we're facing now and what that we're going to face. And one of the things that we said was that if things don't change in terms of demographics, we're going to have a shortage of about 130,000 workers by 2030. And so one of the reactions to that I tended to get was, well, that maybe then we'll start to ease the housing problem. And it does in some ways, but we are still going to have this big challenge. And the reason that we have this is the baby boom generation is such a large generation, especially compared to generations before it. So generally, generations are similar in size. They've been growing a little bit, but then you had this baby boom, which was huge. And it disrupted a lot of things along the way. We had to build a lot of schools in the 50s and 60s, and then the university system expanded. And so all of that occurred. Well, now what's happening is, they're retiring, moving out of the workforce. But like generations before them, they're staying in their homes. And some of them are downsizing a little bit, but they're still, occupying homes, which is to be expected. And so we already had this shortage, coming into this retirement to some degree. And what's happening, though, is they're not pulling it. The way that you can kind of think about it is, as they're staying in their homes, there has to be housing built for the new workers coming into the workforce, those 18, 19, 20, 21, et cetera. And whether those are apartments, single family homes, whatever those are. And so when you look at it that way, when you look at historically the number of homes needed by each age group or residences, we're going to need about 140,000 just to sort of stay even with where we are. And we've talked about the demographic problems, which is, adds another layer to this, in that if we want to address that demographic problem by encouraging people to move here, we need to build even more housing than that. And that number gets to, upwards over 200,000 by 2030, which, especially with the high interest rates now, et cetera, is becoming a big challenge.
Yeah, I guess maybe you could say a little bit more about the scale of this problem and how it could, I guess, what the state could do to kind of address it.
Well, there's a lot of factors that go into this challenge. One of the biggest reasons. So if you look at since the Great Recession, heading up to the Great Recession in 2008, we were building a lot of houses, a lot. We were creating a lot of lots. And so, to build a house, you have to, in terms of zoning, you have to create lots. And after the housing crash in 2008 to 2010, there were some changes made to the laws in terms of that affected banks and how they financed lots, et cetera. And essentially it put a damper on lot creation. And so we saw lot creation plummet. And so that's really the driving force behind this. One of the big driving forces behind this is that over the past 15 years, we've not created nearly enough lots. Because before you can build these units, you have to have those lots created. And we're seeing some change to that now. We're seeing that bump up. But we still have that, those restrictions on the books, and that's really kind of holding us back. But again, the magnitude of the number of units that we have to build now, it's over the next 6 years, it is very large. And the other challenge here really is we have the numbers statewide, and we're pretty confident in those numbers, but housing is a very local issue. And so the question is, where do they need to be built? Because the need in Madison is very different from Platteville, which is very different from somewhere up north. And so this is really a local government issue in terms of, creating lots, in terms of what restrictions do you have on lot size, on all the things that go into construction, because all of those things add to the cost. Because the extra layer on top of this, we don't not only have the units, when you look at really who we're targeting them for to some degree is the new workers, they've got to be affordable. And that's a real challenge as well. So it's a minimum of a two-pronged challenge. We need to build houses, but they also have to be affordable.
Yeah, you mentioned the aspect of this needing to happen at the local level. Do you think that makes this a little bit more challenging, the fact that we can't have some kind of unilateral solution?
Well, it does make it challenging, but again, and I think what we're seeing, we are seeing at the local level, we're seeing counties and we're seeing municipalities begin to take the lead on some of this. Washington County has been taking a lead on understanding the problem and changing the atmosphere in terms of what needs to be done, and so they're being a little bit successful, and you're seeing other communities do that as well. Again, it's not generally, this is not going to be a one size fits all approach, because the need in a smaller community is going to be very different from a need in a larger community. But I think generally everybody understands we have this issue, and they're trying to address it in some manner.
Yeah. One of the reports that I was looking over from Forward Analytics mentioned there could be issues in the future with too much housing in the long term due to a lower population of younger people coming into the state. So what kind of impact do you think that could have potentially?
Well, and this is something, again, we're thinking about now, 2040 and beyond, and a lot changes, during that time period. We understand that. But you think about this challenge that we've got facing us now, that we need to build housing units for those younger people, but that baby boom, is going to, begin to pass on, at some point or whatever, and so that big generation is going to be gone, and those housing units are going to be there. Now, the generations behind them are smaller, but not that much smaller. So it might not immediately be an issue. But when you look even further out, the number of births in Wisconsin has declined in all but 2 years since 2007. So the very younger generations are going to be so much smaller than the current generations. And that's where you start thinking about, okay, what is that going to mean for housing as we get to those, get out past 2040? And it looks like there will be, likely be an excess in some areas and maybe not in others. Some of the rural areas might be a bigger issue than some of the more urban areas. But again, there's a lot that can change. I think Japan has gone through some of this years ago, beginning in the 1990s. And one of the things that you're seeing right now is they have this glut of housing. Now, it's a long time since that they began to have their demographic problems. So again, this problem might be 20 years out, 30 years out. But again, it could be a problem, but we have to solve the housing problem now as well. So, we have to face this, figure this out. And then I think we'll figure out that future, how we're going to deal with it if it becomes an issue.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap it up, I just want to ask, how feasible do you think it is for Wisconsin communities to be able to meet the need that we're facing right now for housing?
I think if you asked me that 2 years ago, I would have said it's feasible because again, everybody pretty much understood the challenges, and we're beginning to do things to solve that problem. I think the answer as to how feasible it is really is going to depend on how long interest rates and mortgage rates stay high. The longer they stay high, you have people that might want to sell and downsize, but still have a 3% mortgage, not wanting to do that because not wanting to take on a higher mortgage. And just the fact that mortgage rates are where they are, that really increases the cost of the house for first-time buyers especially. So a lot of that answer is going to depend on how long rates stay high. And this time last year, we thought by the end of last year, we were going to see those coming down, the rates coming down. And we haven't seen that. And now we've seen the Federal Reserve say, we may have to keep rates where they are for longer than we anticipated. And so that's going to be really, really important in terms of if we, if we solve the problem that we are going to have, or that we're having right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to add on this issue before we wrap it up?
No, I mean, I do think, the really good thing about this is, again, everybody recognizes the challenge, and we're seeing, more and more places do this. The one thing I guess I would say on this is one of the challenges that doesn't get talked about too much, and it should probably get talked about more, is one of the challenges to building quote unquote affordable housing. Now that doesn't mean really low cost. It just means affordable for somebody making a certain income. Is the kind of not in my backyard for people that are living in a community, and they don't want they don't want to see growth, or they don't want to. There's a variety of things behind that. And I think what people have to understand is that, if your community wants to grow and flourish, I mean, it's going to need additional housing. And, if you don't do that, you're going to be left behind. Young people are going to leave your community, and they're going to be moving elsewhere. So I think that's the other component here that we have to get past to some degree. And communities have to understand that all the new houses don't necessarily need an acre lot. All of these things that drive up the cost. They can be built on smaller lots with fewer frills. So,
Great. Well, thank you for joining me on the podcast and sharing your thoughts.
All right, good to be here.
All right, everybody, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Capital Chats, brought to you by Spectrum. In the meantime, I'm Kate Morton. If you want to learn more about the housing shortage in Wisconsin, you can head to our website at wispolitics.com.